Welcome to the Loud Quiet. Ooh, empty nester. Okay. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that actually probably is the theme of the empty nest. What are we doing? Let's do this. Let's do this thing. I don't know if I'm recording. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Sans children. Just us. We need a tissue box up here. Follow along on our journey and maybe, we can learn from others.
Yeah. I don't have a clue how to be empty nester.
This is the Loud Quiet, living the empty nest.
All right. Welcome to episode 14 of the Loud Quiet. Hope everybody enjoyed last week's episode where we ran through some of the shows that we've been watching, both current ones and ones that are from the past, and also ones from our past that we have continued. It was fun reminiscing about that, and I hope that some of y'all that had memories of those same shows enjoyed those memories as well. It was fun to have that conversation.
Yeah, last week's episode was, fun and laughs and yes, and just I laughed a lot in that episode,
yes.
And still just thinking about the shows, and it's just
the temptation is to keep doing it, right? Yeah. We can just continue.
We'll have more. We'll do, because those shows, some of them we've already wrapped, some we're still in, but it's about to be the season of not being able to be outside very much, right. So that's how we entertain ourselves a lot. So
a lot of that, absolutely.
This week's episode, it's not bad. It's just something that as parents, empty nest parents, we have to deal with. It's not just the kids,
right?
As well. We had a fun start to the week. We'll talk more next week about what we did Halloween, how holidays are a little different now, and but we had fun. And then Wednesday just was kind of a blah day, and I want to start with the thing that is really the first world problem of the day. But this was my, again, to reference Seinfeld. This is how I felt on Wednesday when the topic that we discussed last week, and my love, and if any of you read the copy that, I put in there, that TV is my love language. And I actually heard that on something else. I can't even remember what it was now, but just someone was talking about their love of TV. But so Wednesday afternoon, it had kind of already been a kind of off day, which we'll get into. I'm sitting there. It's still chilly. I have the blanket on. The cat, Miso's up in my lap, about to fall asleep. I had the TV on. I don't think I was even paying attention to what was on because I was reading too. But I mean, all of a sudden, this huge pop explosion, the TV just died. And I was just going, really?
Of all the weeks,
I mean, yeah. And again, we have 4 other TVs in this house that we can watch. So it's not a big deal, but it is just, that's our normal gathering area. So it's changed our routine a little bit because we didn't rush out and replace it. But it was just an ender to a day that was kind of wah wah. And
it is. I mean, of course we all know but it felt different when we would we'll say it, when we would watch Sopranos. It feels weird to trundle upstairs. And then, we're kind of I'm sure like a lot of TV watchers at home. All right, I need another glass of water. Oh, got to go hit the restroom. Pause. It takes us a few pauses.
Downstairs, which again, we sound like...
Should we clear all this out? It does make us sound like a bunch of, to the image that you put on screen, my Frankfurter fell, right? So it is very first world. It should have given us an indication of the week.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, it just, like I said, it was, you would just come in from the hair place that you go to, which is they have a nice setup that you come in and have a bourbon or whiskey, whatever your choice is, and then get your hair cut. So when you walked in, I said, just go pour another glass because this is just, but
yeah.
So we, our day doesn't typically start with receiving early texts from the children, either one of them, because they're on a different time zone, and especially Tanner. Tegan, yes, because she's usually up and doing things, but
Yeah.
you
If
know,
there's anything before noon or 1 o'clock
yeah,
our time, we're shocked.
Yeah, and I don't even know how to. This episode is talking about dealing with disappointment and helping your kids deal with disappointment. We had the one where we were dealing with difficult situations. This one is when they just are feeling hurt and disappointed because something didn't pan out the way they thought it was going to pan out. And I think I've referenced this before, but we call Tanner the golden child, which he is not, but we always just say, oh, the sun is shining on Tanner, and the clouds covered the sun a little bit this day. He has been one of those kids that almost everything he has tried, he has succeeded at.
Right.
And some things that he hasn't even put forth effort, he has succeeded at. There's really only one major disappointment that we could even kind of remember in all of his years. And again, it worked out that it was the right thing to happen.
And to say it was a college choice that he wanted. And I was on the tour with him when we went to that college. And I had texted you. I said, this is where Tanner's going to end up. It totally is. He fell in love with it. And we all fell in love with it. And that disappointment of not getting in spite of the right scores, the right yada, yada, all the stuff was there. And it ended up being the right thing. But that moment, watching that hurt, seeing, especially for someone who, as you say, doesn't experience a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that one, I think I felt worse about, and this is not anything dire. Again, it's just when your kid actually put forth the effort, at least to our knowledge, and and really took the time, and then just did not see the results that he wanted to see. Again, he got excellent results, but for Tanner standards,
right?
And a lot of it is the stress and standards that he puts on himself. Mm-hmm. You kind of said it. He has these lofty goals and worldly put on goals, and this time his path is probably gonna veer a little bit, which again, though, the worldly lofty goals may not be what we or he necessarily in the end wants.
Especially and actually in all careers, right? But especially in this one, where there is a pinnacle of company or pinnacle of firm or pinnacle. Well, while you might achieve that, I've also seen a lot of lifestyles that are not what someone might actually want. And this is not his world, not the world that Tanner's going into, but analogous is when I was in consulting. And the aspiration of consulting at that time, a lot have gone public now, but was to make partner. And I, without verbalizing it early on, but I think I knew right away, the last thing I wanted to be was partner, because I saw mostly tan lines where there used to be wedding rings. And I thought, well, yay that you're making the bank, but what about your family? And not that, my gosh, I have now just described a 40-year career path for Tanner based off of one thing. It's just this disappointment probably reduces his options by a category and what that means.
And again,
and that's like
the lofty options
exactly.
have been knocked down a notch, which, like we've said, is probably, I even said that to him over text before we started phone calls. And everyone said this when every kid is applying to college, you will end up where you're supposed to end up.
Absolutely.
The school that he is at, we never even had that on our radar, never even thought.
I think I'd put it actually a little differently. It was off my radar. Like, it was off of your negative.
Yes,
do not go there.
Right.
School.
And he has had the best experience, the best opportunities. It's just this stung, and he's just going through. He's kind of, I almost equate it to and I think we all kind of felt this senior year of college, but you and I went into jobs.
Yeah, we did career rejections.
But I'm not even talking about his. So he sees his friends that aren't continuing their education. They're getting their job offers. They're a little more relaxed. He's still in the phase of, I have 3 more years of school and, I don't know. And again, this is like college. I won't know until next, maybe even April, where I'm going to be for the next 3 years. So he sees the different sides of all the different, things going on senior year. And he's still in the phase of, but I'm still trying to plan my next step of education.
That's right. A lot of that is certain for those folks, and now it's uncertain for him. Heck, he's even got a sister who has signed a lease for next year, and he can't even do simple things like, where am I going to live next year?
Yeah,
and it is, when you're seeing that disappointment, it's because what we got to experience, the story that we were talking about earlier, the disappointment of which school choice. Well, he was here. Mm-hmm. It was part of experiencing that with him, and he could talk to us and be with us. This felt different.
Yeah.
Well, duh. Boy,
well, yeah, and I mean,
obvious.
He called you first and taught, because he's in a little, he's in the, life has ebbs and flows. He's kind of in the pit of the flow right now. Yeah. And, he's been trying to find a job. He has an excellent paying reffing job, but he doesn't want to work every weekend of his senior year, which we get. And he,
there's a slowness to the pay and all that. So he called and talked to me, which we'll have to explore that later, is, how that call came into me. It was interesting, such an overused word. I'm sitting there at work, I'm in my office, and I'm trying, and thankfully I just I could give him full attention. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, dude, I can't talk to you but for 5 minutes. I had all the time in the world at that exact moment. It felt so odd to do this remotely. Mm-hmm. It felt so, and especially, even more so than I think when he was here in high school. And it wasn't like we were helicoptery even when they were in high school, but you felt like you could suggest or recommend or do. When I knew that my role there was primarily to say, man, I'm just sorry. Man, I know that you put in all the effort. The effort in and of itself has value. Don't just look at the results. And, oh, by the way, your results are stupid good. So there was a little bit, when emotion subsided a bit, sort of shut your pie hole, you actually did really well. It was having to do that without him being here. Like, you and I both had different reactions around, okay, what can we do for him, right? Whereas if he was here, hey, let's go get him some cookies or whatever you might do as a parent.
Yeah, and I've done that, because it's not like his college career has just been, home run after home run, but he hasn't had too many difficult situations. Mm-hmm. And the difficult situations he has had have not been something that's going to affect the next step of his future. But I think it was good that you talked to him first, because then later he called me, and, I was listening, and, then he was piling on, and Japanese class is so much harder this semester. And I'm saying, they're going, okay, well, dude, you're in 3rd level Japanese. So yes. And so I think it was a little bit that you were good cop and I was bad cop, because I said, well, I do know what you've been doing all semester because you tell us everything you do. I said, y'all have been enjoying your life. He was like, well, yes, I know. But again, I don't want you to change that. But, you're not at home studying on a Friday night like your sister is, because she knows she has all these plans on Saturday. You're going out and then trying to still catch up with everything. So again, I think it was good that he may have gotten, which is a little bit opposite roles, but and yes, we that night was the Rangers game, and he got to see them win. We sent him a little gift to go out and have some fun, and
and that's I think so. Thinking about this in the context of empty nest, I think that's probably going to. Actually, I shouldn't say probably because I don't know where this is going to go, but it is. So now what can we do? And it's not always about gifts or that kind of stuff, but that was a way for us to express concern because it helped address a particular need of his at that point. So we addressed that need. What's that going to look like, as he kind of evolves and keeps going? And not just he, all of our kids, all of our role. It's been interesting just to feel this evolution over a period of months.
And I do think that's where, I don't know if it's necessarily love language, but we all have because we go through disappointments all the time. I mean, as adults, it's not like you're free from disappointments. That's not how life is. And we all have our comforts that we, enjoy, whether it's, food, beverage, I did tell Tanner this when we were talking. I said, don't, especially college age, do not go out and use alcohol to medicate yourself.
This is not a party medication.
And he said, no, Mom. He said, he's like, that's not I'm not doing that. So, but he did, I'll get back to that slide, but he did, which is our text. He did go out and enjoy himself in another way. He said, by the way, Casey Moore's fried pickles might be the cure to happiness. So yeah.
He
did go out and he actually did go, they all went and watched the Rangers game at their pub that's right by them. And he said, I wasn't the most popular person because he had on his Rangers gear, but so, at least
that was fine with us.
And some good things, did happen for him that day. Actually, he sent us a couple of texts that evening that, some things had already.
And you know what? That's something that we talked about that all the way back when we were dropping Tegan off at school. It was nice to get that text of, okay, you've hit your trough, now you're coming up, whatever that is. And not that Tegan hit a trough, but rather just that, okay, you're okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be because we can't observe them. When they were home, we could observe them.
Yeah.
And I am so thankful that communication is in place, and hopefully we're modeling that for them so they do that with their kids. And I hope that continues on, that we're not just kind of wondering, after some disappointment when they're 35.
Yeah.
How you doing? That we don't have to do it. And I think we've got that. I hope that it stays, and I think it should.
And you could see, I actually did, I was just like looking up stuff about disappointment this week, and, there's stages that you go through, just like, and we could, you could see him going through, he's definitely not probably out of it, but he had things, he worked a tournament, I think, all weekend, and he had things going on. And so he just needed a reset.
Yeah.
And then he'll get back into the things that he needs to get into and continue on with, earlier this week. But I wasn't going to send this to him just because he's probably a lot like me. He's probably a lot like all of us. You don't want to hear, it's going to be okay. But I did like this. It says, don't let today's disappointment cast a shadow on tomorrow's dream. Because like we've seen in our lives, being in our 50s, sometimes the disappointments are the right thing to happen. Sometimes they're not, but sometimes,
you frequently grow the most, and that you grow the most from your failures. And again, we have to keep watching. I have to watch my language.
It's not a failure.
This wasn't a failure. A disappointment.
No,
it's a business word. The whole fail fast and that kind of thing. This concept, though, of don't let it's a very sports generated or sports oriented comment as well, and that is coaches will tell players don't let that flag, don't let that play affect the next play, don't let this game affect the next game. Next play was one of Coach K's key phrases, next play, and I know a lot of coaches say it just was something of his too. And I do actually sincerely believe that about Tanner, that he's a very good next play person. I know that's something that he did not inherit from me. I struggle with next play sometimes, and I'm glad to see him doing that.
He is. Yes. That's a really good point about him, is that yes, he, and I don't know if that's good that he maybe compartmentalizes it and stuffs it down somewhere, or if he truly has that ability.
You hope that he's processed it and moved on, not compartmentalized.
And so and like we said, a lot, we can look at our lives, and a lot of the disappointments have equated into bigger and better things. So it's the path, it's the journey that he's supposed to be on, and but it is just, I don't recall having to do this with him or her. I mean, well, we had her issue, but that was more of it wasn't a disappointment. It was dealing with crazy. But, from afar, like you said, it's just, you can't hug them. You can't, see their face. And so it was different for sure.
And hopefully we've navigated this one well. I don't want to have too many more of these lessons.
Lord. I mean, they are still,
Of course there are going to be these lessons. And I said, I hope.
Yeah. I mean, our parents, even into their, age that they are still probably dealing with when their kids are disappointed. I know we've all three of their kids have had jobs they didn't get, promotions they didn't get, something they wanted that, so it never really.
Boy, that's interesting. Boy, I hadn't even thought about that,
it's
kiddo.
Just,
you're actually kind of breaking my brain a little bit here, because I have thought to myself several times, with my dad passing away in 2003, and here it is in 2023, right, or 2023 that we're talking. There have been many times that I had thought, in the midst of a disappointment or a question or a challenge, boy, I'd really like to actually ask my dad about that. And now with my mom, it was mom and deep stage Alzheimer's. I can't ask that. I'm glad we can continue to provide that for our kids. I hadn't thought about it in the reverse, like you're describing, thinking about our parents. And when that's not there, I think you just kind of broke my brain. Wow.
So I'm sure we're just, we're in for a long life of ups and downs, and that's life. I mean, duh, right. That's just what life is. You can't be, this way, but it also, you have to deal with it. You can't dwell on it. And
it does.
But no, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no.
No. I just was thinking, but that's another topic that I would really, really like to get into. I just want a professional to be on as our guest. Is sometimes these kids can't deal with the disappointment, and then depression, mental illness, which is a very true and increasing amount.
Absolutely.
And so, that's a topic. So if anyone is listening to this and you have any contacts that you might think would be willing to come on as our guest, professional guest, please reach out.
I was, on that one, absolutely. Absolutely. We want to make sure that we can let that be a conversation facilitated by a professional. The last thing I was going to kind of say about that is it does provide another moment of connection. Like when you said the highs and the lows, it reminded me that we celebrate those highs with them, and that we, are there for them in the lows. It's part of being this human unit that we call a family, and it helps build those bridges. So while I will never, ever root for a negative experience for my children, I will see the silver lining that does help bring us closer.
Yeah. And I think the way that we as parents choose to react, everyone reacts differently. And so I think it's true that to keep that good relationship with your kids, you have to sometimes check what you really want to say and, listen and be comforting and guide them. They're adults now. Guide them when they want the guidance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
with a lot more questions than statements.
Which that is usually my issue because I have, a list. Okay, here's what you can do. And I know they don't want to hear that. So
here's what I can do.
Unless they ask. When they ask, then I will help. But yeah, so that was kind of our want Wednesday. But we ended our weekend, though, really fun. We actually tried something new that
it's not pickleball
that Tanner actually introduced to over the summer. He really got into playing frisbee golf. Yeah, disc golf. I guess it's disc golf now.
I have to check myself every time because it's frisbee golf to me. And I remember the first time I played in high school with a big old, I can't remember, not Hasbro, but ridiculous old-fashioned Flyby.
There was some brand of frisbee. Maybe it's frisbee.
Probably. Yeah. Gorgeous Saturday afternoon with the Schiffers. Went out there. The water's somewhat thematic though. It was a lot of fun though, being able to be out there and just do something kind of silly and fun.
Mm-hmm. It was just, we had already had on the calendar that we were, doing something with them on Saturday, which it's so crazy that I feel like now that we're empty nesters, our calendar is more busy than we were.
The power of yes.
Now yes, that is true. I guess we can say yes to more things, but so we were kind of going back and forth, and I was like, it's going to be nice. They're outdoorsy people. Right. We like to be active, all of us. So, I just thought, well, there's a disc golf course that's really nice, park, right by us. And then there's a bar sports bar, I don't know what you call it, brass tap. Anyway.
Yeah, just kind of a casual American bar.
Yeah, that's literally across the street. So you can go there after and drinks and food. And so I threw out the suggestion and they were like, oh yeah, let's do that. And I mean, it was fun. And like I said, I didn't suck as badly as I thought I was going to. We laughed a lot.
A lot of laughter.
Yeah. There was mud because we've had a ton of rain, but it was still fine to get around. Only one of us ended up in the water twice. The one who played before. And
I was in the water a lot.
Yeah. So that's fun, trying to find a tree to try to get your frisbee.
I've never been more thankful to be wearing my hiking boots and my old hiking boots because those were, just covered in mud by the time I got that one out.
But it was just because, again, this is an activity that you can talk while you're doing it because, it's not like pickleball when you're going, which we still haven't tried, but it's on our list. And yeah, it was just a really, really nice afternoon. Nice way to end the weekend.
The walking, the talking, all that. Yeah, I mean, so to those who haven't disc golfed, find a place. It was a lot. What was this kit? $19 for a set of
Amazon. There's
discs.
Just a basic starter kit. We didn't have.
These discs suck.
Oh yeah.
According to the real people that you see out there throwing discs for hundreds of yards, we were like, ooh, it went 20 yards. Yay! Mm-hmm.
But we weren't. Yes, we were just out there to be together.
What did JP say? He kept. I don't think he intended to, but I think he was referencing our first episode. He kept saying, "We're not professionals. We're not professionals." So I don't know if that was an intentional reference, but I kept thinking it that we were definitely not disc golf professionals.
Yeah, but it was fun to catch up with them, and our daughters were very good friends, and they talk still, I think, pretty much every day, and so via text. So it was just good to catch up and see what everyone's up to and how all the kiddos are doing, and
good times.
Yeah, it was fun. So
we'll
see what our next week holds, and
I know we've got holidays on the brain, so thinking about
that's next episode we're gonna kind of talk about how they're gonna be different and
a little teaser there. But, holidays are going to be different, and I'm so excited about this one.
The countdown is on. The kids will be home in 5 weeks.
Oh, I didn't know the countdown had been marked.
I have started the countdown because It's 5 weeks. They'll be
Well, I don't think
home,
he made
so.
the camera much, but I'm sure that
No,
this one,
yeah.
he may not be counting down, but Miso is probably
Yes.
very ready to. Well, who knows? Or he'll feel intruded upon. We're not sure. He has taken over Tanner's bed.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He's taken over the upstairs pretty much.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So there you go. I'm just,
Enjoyed.
yeah, listening to our therapy session again.
Yes, thank you for those of us that are the audience in our therapy session.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
So thanks for sticking with us. Those of you who are continuing to watch, we really do appreciate it. And
Absolutely.
We'll keep it going. We're almost to the end of 2023, so we'll see how this goes.
Been fun. Another episode of The Loud Quiet, Living the Empty Nest.